Welcome, everybody. We're glad to have you here for the 12th Southwestern Pennsylvania Grassroots Town Hall. We will begin with a short video.
The current levels of pollution that we're all breathing are unacceptable, and we can't tolerate it more because it's killing us.
We deserve clean air now. We deserved it yesterday. Our children deserve it.
This is a paper towel off a screen from my bedroom window that I clean every week. I clean this crap off my window.
The Clairton Coke Works is one of the most toxic industrial facilities in Allegheny County.
I never missed a day running in New York City because the air smelled or because I felt like I had a breathing issue. In Pittsburgh, I've missed too many days to count.
The most livable city in America isn't livable if the air isn't breathable.
So welcome to the fire. Because we've been putting up with U.S. Steel's poor environmental record for 150 years now. My mother, who passed away last year from COPD, she never smoked a cigarette in her life, but we live right here next to U.S. Steel.
Everybody in my family's been riddled with cancer. My brother just died of cancer.
Approximately 130,000 people live within a 5-mile radius of the Coke Works. People in this area have air that's worse than 91% of the entire country.
So welcome to the fire.
The children are being sickened. They're developing asthma at a very early age.
I am also the mother of 2, and I fear for my children's and my family's health.
I have a 5-month-old daughter who I'm scared to raise here in the city.
A year and a half ago, I was diagnosed with chronic bronchitis that is likely due to the poor air quality in Pittsburgh.
And I can't understand how there's not enough compassion to put a stop to this.
So welcome to the fire.
If you understand that your child's asthma is approximately the result of Norfolk Southern or is going to be exacerbated by it, then you're going to come to a meeting and raise your voice.
Where petrochemical development occurs, people tend to suffer.
This area has so much more to offer than becoming a cancer alley.
We've got our work cut out for us.
The County Health Department is in charge of enforcing our Clean Air Act and protecting our health. Do you think they're doing a good job? No!
This anger, anxiety, and frustration are the results of residents enduring decades worth of air pollution and violations.
It's on us to be bold, and it's also on us to listen to the needs of the people who are here. They are suffering.
Welcome to the fire. 'Cause the bigger they are, the harder they fall. You build your fortress and I'll climb your walls. You got your armor, but I see your flaws. So welcome to the fire.
We are starting to elect politicians who pay attention and fight hard for clean air. And if you do not fight hard for clean air, we're done with you.
We have to hold accountable those who are harming our communities.
So welcome to the fire.
For decades, we have not been able to breathe.
There is a legal and moral obligation to make the county act.
What do we want? Clean air!
Because cancer should not be the cost of breathing in America's most livable city.
Enough is enough.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Mark Dixon, and I am going to now introduce our Southwestern Pennsylvania Air Quality Town Hall convener, Howard Rieger. Howard, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mark, and welcome everybody to our 12th Town Hall. In planning for tonight's event, I went back through each town hall to try to find out whether there was a common denominator, the key issues that we would have discussed at each one. And it turns out that it's no surprise that failures at the Allegheny County Health Department seem to be one of the most repetitive issues. The list is long. A failure to meet directly with residents, even after multiple requests to do so. A failure to develop a user-friendly complaint system. A failure to utilize Create Lab at CMU, Smell Pittsburgh, and Plume Pittsburgh tech data. A failure to implement a real-time emergency warning system. A failure to adequately fund its own operations. A failure to have a health director with actual public health credentials. A failure to use its Clean Air Fund, the repository of fines paid by polluters, to address resident air pollution-related needs. A failure to assure that the Community Benefit Trust for the Clairton region, funded with fines paid by the United States Steel Corporation for violations at the Clairton Coke Works, a consent agreement that was agreed to by the health department, that too does not address the health needs of residents. We'll open the program tonight with a brief video documenting the recent fires on Neville Island at the Clairton Coke Works and the failure of the health department to warn residents in real time. We'll hear from 4 residents of environmental justice communities about their air pollution related health needs and the failure of the Clean Air Fund or the Community Benefit Trust to meet those needs. So where did all those dollars go? Well, if you take a look at the last tranche of allocations from the Clean Air Fund, $2.2 million, they went to pay for 11 electric street sweepers, an electric refuse hauler, 2 electric trucks, and about $100,000 for tree planting. To date, the Community Benefit Trust allocations have included $1,357,000 for parks and recreation, $854,000 for police vehicles and police and fire equipment, $639,000 for buildings and demolition of buildings, and $230,000 for sewer cameras and streetlights. After the residents speak, Sara Innamorato, one of the 2 candidates for Allegheny County Executive, will share her plans, if elected, to address the issues that were raised in our questionnaire to county executive candidates. Innamorato responded to our questionnaire as we asked in writing, and that was shared with attendees in advance of this program and is posted on our website at www.swpaths.org. Innamorato immediately agreed to accept our invitation to tonight's town hall. We also sent that questionnaire to Joe Rockey, the other candidate, and followed up multiple times with his staff, who eventually informed us that he would not be responding to the questionnaire. We made at least 8 attempts to confirm his attendance tonight, but we never received a response. Now it's my pleasure to turn the program back to Mark Dixon, and then I'll be back during the question and answer period. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Howard. I'm going to share my screen now and highlight basically this video, a couple of little videos that I wanted to share with a little bit of insight into what the health department reported versus what happened on a series of publicly available real-time monitors. So here you can see this is a breathe cam video of a recent fire incident at Metallico on Neville Island, just northwest of downtown Pittsburgh. And the health department, via Allegheny Alerts, said that based on readings from the ACHD's Avalon Air Quality Monitor during the time of the fire, it does not appear that PM 2.5 levels exceeded the moderate range. Now, this, to my eye, looks like very thick, or at least a moment ago, it was very thick smoke, and it was registered by a number of people on the Smell Pittsburgh app as burning plastic, horrible chemical smoke, burning plastic, burning, strong burning, plastic smell, chemical odor. These are all things that are happening sort of southeast. And then you can see this chart here, which is a series of purple air monitors placed throughout the region. With this one in particular, this very high spike is a Mount Washington location. And you can see it goes way up high. This is extremely high levels of, or level of air pollution. We are not certain that this came from the fire, but the timing and wind direction of the fire lead me to believe that this and possibly this little spike here were the result of that fire at Neville Island. This is what the health department said, their full post on Allegheny County alerts. And I think that's all I want to show you about that. So now I'm going to move on to, this is what the Avalon monitor showed, and this is what the purple air monitor showed at the same time. Now, these are not to scale. This is 50, and then 50 here is here. So the health department was basically asserting, yeah, the air is fine, but it was clear to me that the wind was blowing in a direction that the plume did not hit actually the Avalon monitor, but it did hit this purple air, I believe. And so it's pretty frustrating when the health department doesn't look at readings that are available in real time from a free monitor network that's been deployed by a wide range of citizens, when it could have. Instead, it just asserted that the air was in the moderate range, did not exceed moderate, possibly potentially giving people an improper assessment of the risk to them personally. And that's a real tough spot to be in as residents. I also want to highlight, this is not the first time that it happened. There was another fire. Again, the breathe cam. This is actually not a fire. This is a power outage at Clairton Coke Works on August 12th. And there was flaring that occurred with what appears to be thick smoke for hours and hours following that incident. And the health department noted that the Liberty monitor was in the good to moderate range. Meanwhile, I checked on the purple air monitor network once again, and you can see here, this is the Plume Pittsburgh video, also by the Create Lab, and you can see right about now, boom, you can see the plume move all the way up here. I'm going to show that one more time. Boom, the plume, boom, it hits, and it moves all the way up in this direction. The Avalon monitor is over here. Sorry, not the Avalon, the Liberty monitor is over here, but they missed that series of plumes. And when you click on each individual purple air, you see this classic plume signature happening where the air is getting more and more diffuse as it moves away from Clairton Coke Works. And it's really unfortunate, once again, that the health department chose to highlight a monitor that wasn't necessarily in the direct path of the worst pollution. And so instead of really choosing to work with the precautionary principle, they worked with looking at the monitor that they think is closest, but not acknowledging whether or not the wind was blowing the pollution in that direction, and not acknowledging the presence of other monitors in the area that were showing very high readings. These are wildfire level readings for some of these monitors here. So just wanted to highlight that, where the health department appeared to be giving information that may not have been the best information at the time. And now I would like to hand off the microphone to a resident of Clairton, Mr. Melvin Long.
Okay.
Melvin, there you are. Great.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Okay. I was just listening to everything, and I've actually been a lifetime resident of the city of Clairton and dealt with all this. I've always even thought when I was a kid that the air quality was bad in Clairton, but pretty much you didn't say anything because my father actually was employed by Clairton. My uncles, everyone was employed. So you pretty much didn't say anything about the air. Do I believe the air is bad? Yes, I do. Do I still think it's bad? Yes, I do. My father had heart problems. My uncles, they worked in the mill as well. They had emphysema, black lung problems. So I think it all was attributed to the mill. And, you know, back then, you didn't have all the regulations that you have now. So I just can't understand why it's still going on. Nothing's being done to try. I mean, this is a start. I do feel that this is a start with this to come up with ways that we can't change the past. We can learn from it. But just to give you an idea of how bad the air quality is, I went to Myrtle Beach back in June, and I stayed in Myrtle Beach for 5 days. Those 5 days, I didn't sneeze, I didn't cough, none of that. Eyes didn't water. The moment I got back home, it started, I started sneezing, eyes started watering. So the quality of the air is bad. And I notice when I leave from this area, I don't have those problems that I do with Clairton. Now, luckily, it's not as bad as some people, but I can tell the difference when I'm in Clairton. I mean, like I said, I've been here my whole life. I remember that one guy was showing about the soot on the windows. I remember the buildup of soot on cars. And I lived in the vicinity of the mill. So therefore, this is something that we were breathing. So it is nice. I mean, we can't change the past, but moving forward, I like that we're making this effort to try to do something about the air quality in Clairton. A little bit is better than nothing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Melvin Long.
Okay.
Now we have also Ms. Sela Patrick. Sela, are you here? Let's see if I'm... Oh, possibly with I think that Arcella and Ms. Jackie Wade together. Jacqueline, could you check in with me about that? Sorry, folks, just trying to get this straightened out.
And I don't know why it's not doing it.
Oh, there you go. I can hear you now, Jacqueline.
Okay. Hi, how are you?
Great, great. Are you and Sela together?
No, Sela is not going to be on this evening.
Okay, okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, please go ahead.
Okay. I've been a resident of the city of Clairton for about 52 or 53 years. I've raised all my children here in the city. And I started attending some of the VCAN meetings and different clean air meetings. I believe his name was Mr. Smith, came to us years ago telling us about the things that he hoped to be done in the city of Clairton with U.S. steel pollution. And also they had a group from another city where they had actually closed their mill. So a lot of people aren't really concerned because I don't think they know what is actually going on. It's sort of like a mystery to people. They don't believe that that is what is causing a lot of the problems that we have. So when I attended the community meeting of VCAN, I was overwhelmed by the statistics that were given on not only the background of the Clairton Coke Works, the number of people within the city, the number of causes that they felt the mill had given to people, even health backgrounds and also cancer incidents, the children so far as wheezing, asthma, headaches. And I decided that I was going to start going to the community trust meetings. And there I found a group of people who were politicians who were making decisions on what the citizens of the communities needed, but it was nothing that related to what had been quoted by, I believe it was Lincoln Borough's secretary, Ms. Ferda, made a statement, and it was quoted in the Mon Valley Independent of February 24th of this year. Ms. Ferda said that she gave each one of the communities and how much money had been allocated to them, It was based on population, she said, and geographic size in square miles. Clairton was the highest number at 882,597. She also said that the communities must use the money toward projects that are approved by the trust board and are expected to improve, protect, or reduce the risk of public health or environment. And how someone could make a statement like that, knowing that all the pollution and stuff and the detriment that it has caused our community. Now, I haven't seen one time, and I've been to, I think it's 4 of them now, 4 of the community trusts, where they have voted for something concerning air filters, humidifiers, air purifiers, anything that would help these children, even within the school, placing things within the school that would help. So all this money, as the gentleman was talking before, I found out was going for things that the cities needed, which should have been paid for by the taxpayers. That should have been budgeted. And I felt a little ashamed that we had citizens that were letting this go on. So I did speak openly that night at the VCAM and VCAM meeting, even talking about healthcare and how I couldn't understand how AHN and UPMC could continue to let this go when they had statistics on this, even showing that not only cancer, but that this caused some part of mental illness, women to lose children, stillbirth, all these different things that there were statistics on. And it seemed all that these people from these different communities who were heading up this money and making decisions about this money was getting things not that weren't for safety, because cars and trucks and all kind of things are still in our safety category. But we as humans should be their first concern. So that's all I actually have to say.
Thank you very much. That's Ms. Jacqueline Wade. It's really wonderful to hear those remarks, and it's disappointing to hear those remarks, but it's really important to hear them. So thank you for sharing them with the group today. Really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And next up, we have we have former Representative Sara Innamorato will be giving a 15-minute opening statement. And
you have Kiam.
Oh, Kiam. I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I jumped right over Kiam. I apologize. Kiam.
Thank you so much, Mark. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kiam Ansari. I'm the current chair of VCAN. We are a grassroots group focused
Kiam,
on air quality issues.
Can you make your video visible? Great.
Can you see me?
Yes, we
All
can.
right, perfect. So we are a group focused on air quality issues in the Mon Valley. And what I'm going to be talking to you about today is our attempt at getting money from the Community Benefit Trust, as well as the Clean Air Fund. And so I know everyone on this call remembers 2020. We had that horrible fire that took place in Clairton. Around that time, VCAN decided to create an air filter program. We were gracious enough to receive $50,000 from the Heinz Endowment, and we went ahead and spent that money and distributed air filters to homes in Clairton. We were able to put air filters in 157 homes, but unfortunately we ran out of money. And so we very quickly realized that we needed to raise more money. The Community Benefit Trust had just come out in, I think it was like late 2001, after the settlement. We did attend the meetings. Because of COVID, they didn't have the meetings in person and they were held over Zoom. We were asked what kind of things that we wanted to see in a Community Benefit Trust. So we mentioned that, we had this air filter program. We even, and everyone that sat on the board, the mayor told us that if we weren't able to provide the names and addresses of everyone that had applied to receive these air filters, then we would essentially be shut out from being considered, our program being considered for the Clean Air Trust. Essentially what happened, long story short, the money got allocated and the trustees of the board have used that money to essentially pay for sewer cameras and dumpster trucks. We were able to raise money outside of the Community Benefit Trust, thankfully, and we'll be able to purchase around 800 air filters. These air filters they're not the perfect solution, but they are a solution. I'm a pretty active advocate. And so, I've been obviously telling my mom about the air quality issues. And I don't know if she really believed me until we actually purchased an air filter. We got one in the house a couple of days ago, and she had these chronic headaches and migraines and this pressure in her eyes. And I turned it on for about 30 minutes and it disappeared. She hasn't had a headache since. She's been able to game changer. And unfortunately, programs like ours, will not be supported by the Community Benefit Trust or the Clean Air Fund. We're being sent, when we go to the Community Benefit Trust, they go to the Clean Air Fund. The Clean Air Fund, of course, doesn't allocate money towards programs like ours. So we've sort of been in a catch-22. Unfortunately, although we've been able to raise money, it took us 2.5 years to raise this funding. It would be nice if, some of the fine money that's coming out of U.S. Steel that comes from the harms that they cause could go to a program that would put a direct benefit in people's homes. But, obviously this is something that we're going to have to fight for because the municipal governments are using it as a slush fund to fund, whatever projects that they decide. So that's a little bit of background about our experience trying to get funding to help folks. One of the things that the mayor said on the recent coke oven regulation rule change. So we know that little over 2,000 people die every year from air quality related deaths in this county. And the thing that the mayor said that, really struck me as sort of the statement that they've all taken was that this is an acceptable risk. The jobs mean more than the lives of the community members. But we just disagree with that. And so, I think forums like this are important to talk about, how can we work together to kind of bring more awareness to this issue. But unfortunately, U.S. Steel is not going anywhere. They will continue to get fine money, and that money should be going to help community members. And I hope we can do something about that. Thank you for my time.
Thank you very much. That's Mr. Kiam Ansari. Thank you so much for helping keep us in the loop on what was happening there. And yeah, okay. Now, apologies for that, for skipping over you earlier, but now it is time to bring on former Pennsylvania State Representative Sara Innamorato, who is also an Allegheny County Executive Democratic Party candidate. And with that, I see you, Sara. Wonderful. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. Perfect. You are unmuted. And I'll give you 15 minutes and then we'll move on to the next part of the program.
Okay. Well, I will say first, thank you all for being here, for being engaged in this conversation, for using your collective voice to fight for a better world right in your own backyard. It means a lot. I don't think I will take 15 minutes, but I tend not to be very verbose, and I'm more interested in hearing what your questions and concerns are. Really, with the questionnaire that we answered and my website, Sara for All, you can read all about our policies in our plans for Allegheny County, specifically around addressing air quality. So I just want to spend this time with you talking a little bit more about, what my vision is for the county, how we are going to approach this issue of air quality with our community members who are most impacted, and how we can leverage really the full spectrum of resources that exist at the county to be able to push back on this narrative if we have to either choose clean air or jobs, because it's a false comparison. So we know, you all live it every single day. You know that this poor air quality that we're experiencing, it's not only an environmental liability, but it's an economic liability. And you guys see that every single day. We know that it is one of the reasons why we have such high rates of asthma in our young people. Kiam said there were 2,000 people die every year from air quality issues. If we're not, we have to look at that as a loss of human life and time away, but it also means people leave the workforce. It means that when you have to take time off of work and take your kid to the doctor's office because they're having an asthma flare-up, all of these things factor in and cost families real dollars and ultimately cost our economy quite a bit. So even if you want to make the human issue on how we should address this, the moral obligation we all have, there's also an economic argument to make on why we need to prioritize addressing this issue. And I know this firsthand. I was diagnosed with asthma. I'm a native Pittsburgher. I was diagnosed with asthma when I was 3 years old. And I will tell you, whenever I have a flare-up, which have happened a few times over the past couple months, I have to take time off the campaign trail. I have to go take myself to urgent care. I have to sit through breathing treatments. I have to go to the pharmacy. I have to pay co-pays for steroids and special medicine. And I know families are going through that each and every day. And we really need a way to factor in that cost to individuals and households when we're talking about air quality and what we can do. So my vision for the county is, how can we make a county for us all? So no matter what your zip code is, the color of your skin, how much money you have in your bank account, who you love, how you choose to worship, that you have a home here in Allegheny County, that you have a safe and vibrant and healthy neighborhood. And that means that you have clean water and clean air. And I have been thoroughly disappointed in the fact that we've had all of these debates in public forums, and there seems to be no questions about how we're going to address one of our greatest flaws of this region, which is our poor air quality. And we do have plans for that. Is it something we're going to solve overnight? Absolutely not. But it's something that we are going to tap into the energy and the organizing and the path that has been blazed by those who have come before us and those who are on the ground every single day doing the work. We have about $1 billion budget at the county, and that's divided amongst our various departments. And as many of you know, the Department of Health is the vital component in providing permits and enforcement. We have the opportunity to select new leadership at the Department of Health. The way that I have chosen to govern, the way that I have chosen to campaign, which is talking to the community, engaging in the community, and making sure that we have diverse voices around the table when we're making decisions. That is a process that we are going to deploy when we are selecting our new leader of the health department. That means we are going to be looking for someone who has the criteria of not just, being an MD, but also someone who understands public health. They understand environmental science, and they have that background. And we plan on having a community engagement process in order to select who is going to lead our Department of Health. You also know that the Department of Health is informed by the board, and we need to make sure that there are board members who understand epidemiology, they understand public health, they understand environmental health, and we want to make sure that those, as appointments expire, that we are selecting people who have that expertise. We also want to make sure that members from environmental justice communities are represented and have a voice on our decision-making boards that inform the Department of Health. We also know that funding is an issue when it comes to actually funding our Department of Health. Much like the state with the Department of Environmental Protection, they rely heavily on fines and fees to operate the department, which is not a good, it's not a good financially sustainable model, especially because you're relying on industry to pollute and therefore harm residents in order to pay for basic government functions. We, I believe, use around 5% of the Clean Air Fund to fund the Department of Health at the moment. And we really want to make sure that we are allocating the correct resources so that we can not only deliver on the fundamental promises of issuing permits and providing enforcement, but also that we have the necessary people and tools in place to have community dialogue. And we also need to make sure that we're hiring up good enough people to run the Department of Health. We have a severe staffing shortage at the county, not only in the Department of Health, but throughout the county operations. We have about 1,600 open positions. I know there are a lot of people who work at the county who really care about delivering quality civil service to our neighbors, but they are often overworked and underpaid and not necessarily permitted to engage in dialogue with the community. And we need to change that. So we need to make sure that we're hiring up folks, that we're paying them fairly, and that they have the tools and resources they need to be successful in their jobs and the technical aspects of it, but also that we have the engagement tools necessary so that you can have a two-way dialogue with the Department of Health and that we're responsive and can engage and be able to deliver real results and real answers, even when there is issues that arise. And we also need to look at how we're incorporating an environmental justice framework into all of our initiatives that we deliver through the Department of Health. For too long, there's been an opaque process when it comes to delivering the clean air funds to the community. And so having a clear framework on how we're evaluating proposals, how we're considering equity, and how we're involving community voice in that process is extremely important to me and my administration. And I will look at creating that process in community and in partnership with all of you. But really, like I said, we don't need to choose between clean air and jobs. We have this unprecedented amount of resources that exists at the federal level, and we can leverage the convening power of the county exec's office and our Department of Economic Development to say, how do we build a green and sustainable future that includes us all, especially communities like Clairton and folks in the Mon Valley that have been left out of the dialogue for too long and left out of investment. What we saw from Congresswoman Summer Lee is a great example where she leveraged her position in Congress to help secure a $500 million Department of Energy loan for EOS, which is in Turtle Creek. and they're building batteries for renewable energy storage, which is a great example of how you can create jobs that are clean and green and also hire people from the community. Because of that investment, they're going to hire about 1,000 new people from the Mon Valley. And it's just that kind of energy and creativity and connectedness and community dialogue that can make us a better and stronger region, that can give us access to these types of tools and resources that we need to be able to deliver on the promise of a better tomorrow. I'm here. I want to be in partnership with you all. I'm excited to be so close to the finish line. This is the point of campaigns that get pretty nasty, and there's a lot of money being spent on ads that are portraying me in a different light. And that is being funded by a PAC called Save Allegheny, which is primarily funded by Jeffrey Yass, who's a billionaire in Pennsylvania, who gives a lot of money to the Commonwealth Foundation. And I mention this because we were always fighting the Commonwealth Foundation in Harrisburg because they were trying to roll back environmental and public health protections under the guise of moving business forward. It's also funded by a host of folks who are tied to the fossil fuel industry, and they are going to say what they need to say, but mostly they're afraid that Allegheny County is going to see a leader that cares about clean air, that cares about environmental justice, that cares about engaging with everyday people to make sure that we can build a better and brighter future that includes more of us. They're afraid that we're going to make a bigger table where we have more voice and we have more power. And I say that because not only do I need your voice now, but I need you when we get into office and that we can govern together. And I just appreciate you all and the work you do each and every day in your community. I look forward to seeing how we can get across the finish line together and to work to build a better, brighter, and more inclusive world. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We really appreciate you being here. And now I'm going to introduce or bring back on our convener, Howard Rieger, and Howard is going to help to facilitate Q&A with our audience. Howard, come on back.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks to all of our presenters. It's really important to hear the voices of residents. It's one of the cases we've been making consistently that our health department hasn't been willing to engage. Fortunately, on May 2, we did get Adam Ortiz from Region 3 of the EPA, who was our Region 3 administrator, and 5 members of his team to come to the Mon Valley, to go to Clairton, to go to North Braddock, and to actually hear residents firsthand. You could do that all the way from Philadelphia. We can't seem to manage to do it from downtown Pittsburgh. So hopefully that can be an important element. One other thing I just mentioned quickly, and then we'll go to questions because it is a form of a question. Recently, Patrick Dowd, who's the acting director of health, wrote an op-ed that appeared locally. And one of the things he said in there was actually borrowed from a previous the current administration, a line that said, well, if activists, advocates such as ourselves didn't complain, we wouldn't be able to raise money. I can only say on behalf of the Southwestern Pennsylvania grassroots resident-led town halls, we don't raise any money, we don't take any money, we are a volunteer-led organization. So when that search process begins for a new health director, Patrick Dowd is the current individual sitting in that acting position. Last time around, it took a long time to fill that opening. And just wondering if you have any thoughts about that kind of attitude on the part of our current management and how that might feed into a search process.
Yeah. So we will be doing a national search for a new director for the Department of Health. And we will have a community advisory board who will be part of the interviewing process, so that we can select someone who is going to share the values of inclusivity and equity, but also has the technical expertise and experience in engaging in dialogue around public health and environmental science and climate change, and all the things that are very important and vital to the leadership of the Department of Health.
Thank you.
And I will also say, sorry, the other point I just want to make is that, progress moves at the speed of trust. And I know we're starting from a trust deficit as it pertains to the community and the Department of Health. I've had the privilege of talking to a number of people who used to work for the Department of Health and work there currently. And I do think that there is a lot of really smart, passionate, capable people who want to do the right thing. And they want to work with the community. They just need the leadership who's going to empower and enable that dialogue and that conversation to occur. And under my administration, we will be focused on connecting with the community in a meaningful way.
Well, thank you. I would just say in the not too distant past, there was an opportunity to have some chance to connect with individuals who worked at the health department. In the most recent period, Patrick Dowd cuts that off. So hopefully that, we can have that kind of open dialogue and take advantage of the skill set that is there. So thank you. Mark, you have some questions that you can share with us?
Yes, lots of great questions coming in from the audience. We have one here from Abhishek Viswanathan, who says, who usually has the tools and resources like time, energy, and language to engage with community engagement processes? How will it be more inclusive? I'll read that again. Who usually has the tools and resources like time, energy, and language to engage with community engagement processes? How will it be more inclusive?
So we plan on investing in someone who's directly in my office who's focused on equity and inclusion. And that type of engagement and thoughtfulness needs to have someone who is in the executive and county manager's office who's thinking about how that transcends departments and moves people into a space where we are creating the opportunity for dialogue and engagement. So, what I've learned in the past is as someone who worked in the nonprofit sector in community organizing many moons ago, is that if you want people to show up and bring their whole selves and bring a story, you need to be adaptive, and you can't be on this 9-to-5 schedule. You need to be in places that are accessible at times that are most convenient for people. You need to look at providing food and childcare, and really say, how do we remove any barrier for participation, and make sure that that is communicated far enough in advance so people know and they can work their schedules around, and potentially having, virtual options as well. So, it's those types of operational changes that can make dialogue and community participation much easier. We are also looking at the way that we are going to budget in 2025. So I will, if I'm successful in this endeavor in November, getting it in January, we inherit a budget, right? And we want to use that first year in office to talk about how we convert to priority-based participatory budgeting. And that sounds weird and wonky, but what it means essentially is that we are going out into the community and we were talking about what is important to the people of this region. And then how do we take that feedback and devise a budget that is tied to those shared priorities that are agreed upon. And something I do hear quite a bit is people's concern about climate change, about air quality, about water quality. So we need to be able to show that in the budgets that we're delivering to county council, and how we're communicating that progress with the community throughout the year.
Thank you for that. I think that there may be a question in the audience from Nana Cole. Nana, are you there? And do you have a question?
If not, I see one from Louis Bram that is relevant.
It appears Nana is unmuted themselves. I don't see you. Nana, if you have a question, you can just speak up and ask it.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So thank you so much for having me. So my name is Nana Cole, and I'm a 9th grader at Winchester Thurston Academy. And I'm also a program director with Next Gen Pittsburgh and specifically Civic Stage. And so over the past couple of weeks, Civic Stage has been focused on the topic of air quality and how it particularly relates to asthma. And so to my knowledge, the childhood asthma rates in Allegheny County are 3 times the national average. And so in addition to this, many of my friends and peers suffer from asthma. So I would like to know how we can work with you and your administration, if elected, to help lower these numbers.
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. And thank you for being so engaged. While you're only in 9th grade, and that's pretty incredible. I think what I've seen out of the environmental movement is that there's so many young people who are stepping up, who are using their voice to not only advocate for change, but to really connect with lawmakers and decision makers to make sure that their voice is being heard and that their story is part of the conversation on how we're going to change the world and how we're going to address things like air quality. So, you bring up a very valid point, and this is what I tried to mention in my opening remarks, is that we have a crisis on our hands when we're talking about our air quality, and it negatively impacts people's health. So we have to take a 2-prong approach. So first is, how do we help the people who have respiratory ailments and other health issues that are likely exacerbated or caused by poor air quality and other environmental hazards. So that's really leveraging the Department of Health and deploying public health initiatives to make sure that we are helping people get access to medicine if they need it, that they can access things like air filters to keep themselves safe in their home. Because the reality is that we aren't going to change air quality overnight, and we need to make sure that we are coming up with interventions, and we're helping to fund that publicly in partnership with our philanthropic community, so that we can make people, get people the resources and tools they need to be able to care for themselves and their families today. Long term, we work on reducing emissions. Allegheny County, we have most of our pollution comes from industrial sources. So because the county health department issues those permits, it's about looking at what are these permits meeting the Clean Air Act standards. We'll tell you a number of them aren't. So it's working with those companies to get them into a place of compliance, whether that's having them invest profits back into making their production more modern, safer, and cleaner. It could also be partnering with them to say, all right, what's the next phase of your industry? So looking at US Steel, for example, which is one of our major polluters, the Coke Works on their campus, how do we say, you've just made a $1.3 billion investment in Arkansas with electric arc ovens, which are far cleaner and produce a product that's necessary for our economy. How do we get you to make that type of investment here in the Mon Valley, in the place that you call home, in a place that you've harmed for so long? And that's where bringing together the community, industry, universities, other public officials at all levels saying, okay, how do we create a plan? How do we draw down these dollars and make sure that we can invest in opportunities that not only build the jobs of the future and make a greener and more sustainable economy, but that the people who have been impacted, who want those jobs and access to opportunity, are also at the table and able to take advantage of the type of investment. And so we have to take a multi-prong approach in order to be able to deliver on protecting people today and then building a more inclusive and greener future for us all in this region.
Great. Thank you so much. We would definitely love to help and would definitely like to be in touch. Thank you so much for speaking and answering my question.
Of course. Thank you for being here.
Great. That's great. Thank you for that question. Thank you for that answer. We have next a question from Louis Bram. Louis, I can read your question, but if you would like to read it to the group, you are more than welcome to. We're kind of pivoting here on the fly and doing a little bit more reading.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah, go for it.
Well, the question, I had two questions, but I'll ask you this one. Why do you think UPMC is a nonprofit that pays no taxes to Allegheny, hasn't made a formal statement about the danger air pollution poses to our region? And do you plan on communicating with UPMC to encourage them to be more proactive and outspoken about the health risks pollution poses?
Of course, I'm always encouraging medical professionals and folks who, operate in the system to be more outspoken and using their credentials and their expertise and the data and science that they have access to talk about what the real harms are to people, but also to use their position of authority to advocate for necessary changes that are going to make all of our lives better. UPMC is one of our major nonprofits in the region. They own a substantial amount of property, not only in the city of Pittsburgh, but throughout our region. And, one of my goals is to bring together UPMC, Allegheny Health Network, our major universities, and work with the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh and say, how do we create a pilot program, which is a payment in lieu of taxes? Because I don't think stripping UPMC of their nonprofit status is the answer, because I don't think a for-profit hospital is any better. But I do believe that because of the role that they play in the region and the amount of profit that they're able to generate, that they owe us some dollars and investing in the public coffers to help pay for some of the basic fundamental operations of the county, including having a robust and modern health department. And, we've had a number of folks like in our university systems who have used their expertise, their position, and produced reports and are speaking up. And we have to continue, my administration will support those voices and lift them up and make sure that the data and the evidence that they're bringing is at the table when we're making decisions about the future of this region.
The other question I had, I didn't know if it was okay to ask, but also I just felt like the health department in the past has had very close relationships with industry. And I wondered if the new person, people you might bring in there, how do you avoid conflicts of interest, that they don't have any ties with industry, coming into those positions,
Yeah. So I think it's important to have folks who span the skill sets needed in order to have a robust board of health and the boards that fall underneath the board of health who have that expertise in permitting and industry and things like that. The plan that we have is to have them sign ethics agreements and really abide by a high level, a high standard for serving on in exchange for serving on the board and helping to inform public decisions. I don't think that conflict is a negative thing. If we have conflict, it should be held out in the public for discourse, so folks can be a part of it, so that they can see how the Board of Health is grappling with an issue, and that if there is constructive conflict, then we can get to a stronger and better resolution. But my goal of appointing board members is to make sure that the voices that have been absent at the Board of Health are present in the majority. So folks in the public health sphere, epidemiologists, environmental scientists, folks who expertise is absolutely vital in this decision-making process that have not been appointed to the Board of Health in the past.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, great questions, Louis. Thank you for asking those. Howard, do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to follow on quickly with just a couple of points of order vis-a-vis the UPMC question. Back in September of 2021, actually September 29, 2021, we sent a certified letter to Nicholas Beckwith, chair of the board, and Leslie Davis, president and CEO at UPMC, David Blandino and Cynthia Hundorfin at Allegheny Health Network, pointing out obviously that we have a problem and asking for an opportunity to meet and have a dialogue. We never got an answer. We didn't leave it at that. We sent another letter. We didn't get an answer. We reached out to try to call. It's kind of impossible in both of those organizations to find a way to get a telephone number or an email address, but they're very anxious to do community publicity, et cetera. So we reached out to their community affairs vice presidents, sent them emails, called them, got no response. We didn't give up there. We've tried various other ways to reach out to members of the staff at UPMC. As recently as last May, at the end of the month, I believe, Healthcare Without Harm had an annual meeting here, Clean Med 2023, 700 people next door to the David Lawrence Convention Center. And we made some connections there. Subsequently, we met with the organizer of that conference and several docs from UPMC, trying again. Every single way we have tried ends up going nowhere. So, we've raised the question of it's important for them to speak out. It's important for them to warn people. It's important for them to let people know it's a bad air day. You should be careful. Here's what you can do to protect yourself. And if we can't get our largest medical providers to speak to that, who will? So that's an important issue for us. It's the kind of thing that if you were successful and you were in office, we would want to partner in a way that could have that conversation. We don't want to embarrass anybody. We just want to engage people. And it's been impossible to do so. So just as a little history for you and your team.
Sure. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Howard, do you have any other or would you like me to pull up a question from the list?
I think they saw the one from Deb. Sounds like a one worth raising.
Yeah. Deb, do you want to read your question, or would you like me to read the question?
Go ahead, Mark. I can't find it.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Okay, so you wrote, why do you think, so this is to Sara Innamorato, why do you think you are the only candidate talking about our region's historically poor air, and how might we turn this around?
I don't know. Maybe it's my experience in the State House and having worked on these issues at the state level for quite some time. Mostly, my role in the State House was talking about fracking waste and how to strengthen those protections secure that the fact that waste wasn't getting put into municipal landfills and everywhere else that your garbage was going. And so I guess I've seen firsthand kind of where how the lack of a regulatory framework, how devastating that can be to communities. So, this isn't me showing up today running for county executive. This is me, 15 years ago, working in the nonprofit space, working and helping communities turn vacant, blighted land into green spaces, and then organizing for what's next in their community. It was working as, a consultant and partnering with community-based organizations to talk about food justice and food deserts. Working in the State House on these issues. And so, I know how much people care about this issue. I know how much I care about it personally. I know in talking to, academics and doctors and policy experts from across the globe, how important this issue is, how it negatively impacts our health, our economy. And I want to really raise the alarm. I think in Pittsburgh, we're used to this story that, well, it used to be a lot worse, right? The air used to be a lot dirtier. You could physically see it. And, we've cleaned it up. So our job here is done, mission accomplished. And that is not the case. And we need to be able to let people know that there is still a lot of work to do, and that we shouldn't turn our backs on this work, even if it's difficult, and even if we can't solve it tomorrow, even if there's not one silver bullet, one policy that's going to get us across the edge. But this takes a commitment to one another, a commitment to our region, a commitment to our climate and our world. And I'm here for the long haul, so I look forward to seeing what we can do together.
Super. Thank you very much for that, for the question and for the answer. I think we've got a good run of questions here. We still have several more to go. I would like to offer a question of my own. And that is that I was disappointed, if not disturbed, when I saw at an Allegheny County Health Department meeting a chart showing the abysmal health outcomes for African American women in Allegheny County. That juxtaposed with the gentrification in the county, in many cases, I believe, is pushing a lot of poor people, possibly also poor people, people of color, into areas with worse air quality, like around Clairton. And they get there and they have no idea what they are going to encounter in terms of worsening air pollution there. I'm curious to know, what are the things that you might be able to do, interested in doing, willing to do to kind of address that intersection and correct this major fault that we have in health outcomes in Allegheny County, especially for African American women? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our work in the environmental justice space is directly linked to racial justice work. And you pulled out the appalling example of our region, especially when you hear Pittsburgh being on the top list of best places to live. And then you look at health outcomes of our Black mothers. This isn't a city for all. It's not working for people. That's why we've said our North Star is, how do we create a county for us all? And that involves addressing all of these issues. There are a number of reasons why, why this is the case, why these disparities exist. I would say first is always looking at representation and who do we have in positions of leadership? Do we have Black women in positions of leadership within our county government who are helping to make these decisions and guide these resources? That's step one. So, we'll be making sure that our administration is diverse, that it is reflective of the community, and that we are having that dialogue with community to select the right people to put into these positions. It's also about, leveraging, I'm going to talk about just specifically addressing the public health concerns and the tools and resources that we do have. Our department, we talk a lot about Department of Health, but we also have the Department of Human Services, and that budget is north of $1.3 billion. These are very real dollars to put programs in place that help address these disparities. We have programs like Healthy Start and home visiting and centering pregnancy initiatives that, I will continue to fund and expand under my administration, because we know it works. We know it is led by Black women, that it is a proven mechanism to help address these disparities. Because what's important in so far as talking about a future vision, that's important. Don't get me wrong. We have to talk about the issues of blight and affordable housing and how all of these things are so deeply interconnected, but we also need to help people today. And we have programs and resources and tools to begin to address moms and babies today. And we want to make sure we're centering on that, and also talking about how do we invest in communities that have been left behind for far too long? How do we make sure when we're inviting businesses to move here, when we're inviting investment and dollars to come into our region, that we're protecting the people who are there so that they get to benefit from those dollars that are coming. What's great about the federal dollars, that a lot of them are tied to requirements that mandate community benefit agreements, that mandate that these dollars go to Justice 40 communities, which means environmental justice communities, which means a lot of the communities within the Mon Valley, and a number of other ones throughout Allegheny County. So, those kind of requirements force us to be intentional with how we're baking in equity and justice and diversity when we're designing these programs and distributing dollars.
Thank you very much for the answer. Really appreciate it. There's so much there. It's good. Okay. I have another question. This is by Patrick Pagano, who asked me to read it for him. He says, "Thank you, Sara. You have me sold on your dedication, sincerity, and commitment to air quality improvement and human health, but how do you convince independents, municipalities, and the business community now and on day one that jobs in the green sector can match or exceed jobs and economic and tax revenue generated by the petroleum and steel industry? Do you have a ledger of sorts or white paper to demonstrate this as a viable and robust path forward economically, and one that is equitable or greater in green and renewable technology?"
Yeah. So, we are, if you look at the Clean Job Report that the state puts out, Allegheny County actually has the highest number of green jobs and of anywhere in the state. A lot of those are in energy efficiency. So not necessarily in, building solar panels, but in weatherizing homes and making buildings more efficient and updating our infrastructure that moves energy around the places it needs to go. So we can look at that. There's a great organization called the Ohio River Valley Institute that centers a lot of their economic work on addressing climate change and building up a green economy. And, I would say there's a lot of business leaders that are interested in this, in accessing the federal dollars, right? Like, even if you're a good capitalist, you're going to chase money. You're going to go where the dollars and resources are. And right now we have a lot of dollars and resources as it pertains to building up new low carbon, green, sustainable economies. And so we have, the benefit of having our universities like Pitt and the headway and research that they've done in the healthcare space. We have CMU that leads in robotics. Both of them are doing a lot in the life sciences space. So we have all of the inputs necessary in order to build the table that can bring us further investments in, not only a green and sustainable economy, but one that's rooted in innovation and inclusivity. And, we just need to tap into that energy. And we also are getting word of the people like, Google, they want to expand their office space in areas where they can access 100% renewable energy. And you're seeing this trend of corporate leaders and corporations asking for the places that they choose to relocate or expand to have these types of amenities and to have access to the clean and green economy.
Super. Thank you. We have about 10 minutes left in the program, and we want to get as many questions in as we can. There is another one here. And so maybe, Sara, if you give a little bit shorter answers, then we can hit a few more additional questions in that 10 minutes. So maybe try a little bit of a rapid fire here so we can get these, get as many of these in as we can. If that works for you.
Sure.
Okay, great. From Thomas Matza, why are clean air funds being used on things that do not explicitly support community respiratory health in Clairton and other affected communities?
I cannot speak to how clean air funds are currently being used because I'm not there. What I can say is that moving forward, there will be a clear process on how to apply for those funds. And there will be transparency on how those funds are distributed and how they're used.
Great, thank you. Another one from Sandy Fox. The current county executive pushed to have Amazon erect a mega distribution center in Churchill within 1,000 feet of 400 homes and 3 schools, where hundreds of semi-tractor trailer trucks a day would have been spewing diesel exhaust. Would you have pushed this proposal?
I don't like to live in the hypothetical, to be honest, because I don't have all of the details for what that proposal looked like. What I can say is that whenever there is a major proposal on the table that's going to impact the quality of life of the residents that live in the proximity, that there will be a community dialogue with that. And we won't let corporations run rickshaw over our communities, but there will be a productive dialogue and hopefully come to a sense of what's needed and required in order for everyone to win.
Great. Thank you for that. Another one here from, let's see, ITDI, an electronic recycling company based in Wilkins Township. One of the things we focus on is safely getting rid of electronic waste. Are there currently any programs that tackle this problem? And moving forward, what are ways you will address the safety/climate issues and pollution that come with electronic waste?
So I think that this is an issue that is best dealt with and funded by the state government. I know we're fighting for raising some of the fees on the sale of electronics to help fund e-waste recycling. Right now, we rely on the Pennsylvania Resource Council to come in and do hard to recycle events. I'm sure someone has sat in a long line of cars in order to drop off your e-waste and other hard to recycle materials. This is something that we can figure out a plan on how to fund additional hard to recycle events throughout the county. But, we're also speaking about a world where municipalities, so the 130 that are present in Allegheny County, they're each responsible for their own curbside recycling and trash pickup. So many have actually dropped recycling, even for, I would say, easier to recycle materials. And so we're looking at an opportunity in this challenge to say, how can the county be a convener across municipal boundaries? How can we use our COGS, which is our Congress of Local Governments that are placed around the county by region, on, coming up with, ideas on how we can not only provide better recycling infrastructure for our households, but also get into the space of helping to care for and provide some avenues for people to recycle electronics and other hard to recycle materials.
Super. I just have one more question, and then Howard has closing remarks here for this program. I have probably about 6 friends so far who I know who have left Pittsburgh in part because the air pollution was too bad. And I have another family with a couple friends who are planning to leave Pittsburgh because the air is no good. As a candidate, what can you say to families in Pittsburgh who are concerned about staying here because of the air pollution?
Mm-hmm. I mean, all I can say is that, my administration recognizes that air quality is a major issue. And like I said, it is a public health and economic liability. And it's an economic liability for exactly the reason you said. We are a region that is getting older and we are losing population. So if we want to be an attractive place for people to move here, we need to be welcoming. We need to have clean air. If we want to keep young people here and families that are here, we also need to invest in those things. So really, we need to make sure that we're focusing on this issue, acknowledging that it's an issue, and really mobilizing the resources and the power of the county to address it in a comprehensive and meaningful way. So all I can say is that, my administration will work hard on this issue. We will put the right people in place. We will hold corporations accountable, and we will convene the tables necessary in order to combat what is a deeply hard problem to solve, but one that requires our attention.
Thank you very much, Sara Innamorato, candidate for County Executive of Allegheny County. We really appreciate having you here on tonight to answer so many of our questions about so many different things. I'm going to now hand off the closing of the event to Howard Rieger, our Southwestern Pennsylvania Town Hall's convener.
Briefly, I just would, this goes back to Patrick Pagano's question about, petroleum and steel industry taxes, et cetera, and how that would balance with green industries. And I think I just take a page right out of the book of silence that UPMC and AHN have kind of presented us with, which is, if you can't talk about something, you can't explore what the possibilities are. So we've reached out to create a corporate dialogue. We've reached out to the Allegheny Conference on Community Development. Our universities don't want to have that conversation. And the reality is something needs to break that logjam so that we can have that honest conversation about what are the alternatives. The alternatives to putting $1.7 billion of money from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as a contribution, a tax break to Shell Petroleum, and they build a plastic plant in Beaver County. It's got all of 400 employees. So, I just wanted to kind of put that out there as a challenge for all of us. How do we create that dialogue? And the second thing, I just wanted to mention, I just walk away somewhat encouraged by the fact that, Nana, when you were here speaking earlier, we have youth voices. And maybe that's a missing piece of this equation. We get youth to the table. Maybe it's harder to say no to them. Maybe it's harder to ignore them than it is to ignore us. And so I see this as a possibility of building a further coalition to join with Southwestern Pennsylvania resident-led town halls, grassroots element, that can really perhaps take us to another level. So Sara, I really thank you for spending the time with us, committed to being here for the entire evening. And thank you to everybody who participated. And you'll hear more from us as we plan Town Hall number 13. Thank you. Have a great night.